Welcome to the Daily Stoic Dose. As usual, we provide the best and authentic Stoic content to you. Before starting this video, please subscribe channel and share this video. Let's start. She's not losing interest. She's losing control. Most men panic too early. They feel the shift before they understand it. The replies slow down, the warmth cools, the curiosity fades into silence, and immediately, the mind jumps to the same conclusion: she's not interested anymore. But what if that conclusion is wrong? What if the distance you're sensing isn't rejection, but resistance? What if the reason she's pulling away has nothing to do with you failing, and everything to do with you getting too close? Stay with me, because what you're about to hear goes against almost everything modern dating advice teaches, and near the end of this video, I'll reveal one specific behavior that almost every man misreads, yet once you understand it, you'll know with certainty whether she's emotionally disengaged or quietly fighting herself. Here's the uncomfortable truth: sometimes the woman who seems cold today is the same woman who already imagined a future with you, and that's exactly why she's running. Why women don't run from men they don't feel anything for. Let's destroy a myth first. Women do not pull away from men they don't care about. If she's uninterested, she doesn't hesitate. She doesn't struggle, she doesn't oscillate, she disappears. Cleanly, quietly, completely. Distance with clarity is indifference. Distance with confusion is conflict, and that conflict always comes from one place: emotion she didn't plan for. Picture this: she was present, engaged, curious. She laughed at things that weren't even jokes. She asked questions she didn't need to ask. The energy wasn't forced, it flowed. Then suddenly, something changes. Her messages shorten. She's busy. The warmth is replaced with formality. Your instinct says, "I lost her." But here's what most men never consider: strong attraction doesn't always pull people closer. Sometimes it activates fear, and fear doesn't chase, it retreats. The neuroscience no one talks about: this isn't romance, this is biology. When a woman develops emotional attachment unexpectedly, her brain doesn't interpret it as pleasure, it interprets it as risk. Her nervous system releases the same stress chemicals associated with threat. Her body reacts as if something dangerous is approaching, not because you're unsafe, but because you matter. Vulnerability registers as loss of control, and loss of control feels like danger, especially for women who have been hurt deeply before. Built their identity around independence, didn't intend to feel anything serious, or promised themselves they'd never fall like that again. So when emotions show up uninvited, her mind does what it was trained to do: protect, withdraw, regain control. That's when distance appears, not because she doesn't want you, but because she doesn't trust what wanting you might cost her. The silent test you didn't know you took. Here's the part most men miss completely: before she pulled away, she tested you, not overtly, not consciously, but emotionally. She created small moments of distance, subtle tension, tiny disruptions, and she watched. Did you panic? Did you overinvest? Did you chase reassurance? If you did, she felt it, and if you didn't, she felt that too. These tests aren't manipulative in the traditional sense, they're instinctual defenses. Her mind is asking, if I let myself feel more, will he collapse into need? Your response determines whether her fear grows, or slowly dissolves. Why distance is her shield, not her exit. When a woman is truly done, she doesn't linger, but when she's afraid, she does something strange: she pulls back. Without letting go, she creates space, but leaves doors open. She cools down, yet continues watching. This contradiction is the key. Fear doesn't erase desire, it hides it, and the stronger the feeling, the stronger the defense. That's why the women who seem the most confusing are often the ones feeling the most. The difference between disinterest and emotional self-protection. Before we break down the signs, you need to understand something most dating coaches never say out loud: not every woman who pulls away is worth waiting for. And not every pattern means fear. There is one specific type of woman this entire framework does not apply to, and if you mistake her behavior for emotional depth, you'll waste months of your life. I'll expose that type later, but first, let's decode the patterns that reveal when a woman isn't losing interest. She's losing emotional equilibrium. Sign number 1, inconsistent warmth that makes no logical sense. One day, she's present, responsive, playful, open. The next day, she's distant, slow, detached. Men call this mixed signals. But mixed signals aren't random, they're proportional. The deeper the connection felt yesterday, the colder she becomes today. That's not coincidence, that's regulation. Her system overheats emotionally, then slams the brakes. Here's the critical detail: if her coldness always follows moments of depth, late-night conversations, emotional disclosures, shared vulnerability, you're not being rejected. You're being avoided emotionally, by someone who feels too much. She isn't pulling away from you, she's pulling away from how she feels around you. Sign number 2, she deflects the moment things feel real. You say something sincere, not a compliment, a recognition. You ask a question that goes beneath the surface. You mention the future casually, not commitment, just possibility, and suddenly, she jokes, changes the subject, becomes guarded, shifts tone. Uninterested women don't deflect. They disengage. Deflection is defensive behavior, and defense only activates when something matters. Here's the tell most men ignore: if you pull back slightly after she deflects, and she later reinitiates contact, you've just confirmed the truth. She doesn't want closeness, but she doesn't want absence either. That tension only exists when emotional attachment is present. Sign number 3, she watches you more than she talks to you. This is the one that feels almost unsettling once you see it. She's slow to reply, but quick to observe. She sees your stories instantly, remembers small details you barely recall sharing, references things you mentioned weeks ago in passing. This isn't casual interest, this is mental replay. She's monitoring without engaging, because engagement feels dangerous. Observation feels safe. If she didn't care, she wouldn't watch. Attention is emotional currency, and she's spending it quietly. Later, I'll show you how this single sign allows you to communicate without saying a word, and why restraint here builds attraction faster than effort. Sign number 4, she mentions other men. Without emotion, she brings up an ex who texted, someone who asked her out, a coworker flirting, but there's no excitement, no emotional charge. This isn't competition, it's calibration. She's measuring your internal stability. Will you react? Will you tense up? Will you chase? Here's the paradox: jealousy doesn't signal strength, it signals investment imbalance. The correct response isn't indifference alone, it's relaxed amusement. Emotionally grounded men don't compete, they observe, and when she sees that you don't need to win her, her fear begins to shift. Sign number 5, her friends know more than you do. Watch her circle. If her friends give you knowing looks, act warmer than she does, encourage contact, create opportunities for proximity, you're not imagining it, she's been talking. Women don't discuss men they feel nothing for, and if her friends are subtly rooting for you, they've seen this pattern before. They know what happens when she actually cares, and they're watching to see whether you'll remain centered, or crumble under uncertainty. The biggest mistake men make at this stage: there are 2 common reactions, both fail: chasing harder, over-explaining, reassuring, over-presence, cutting off completely, emotional disappearance as punishment. One signals need, the other signals indifference. Neither creates safety. What works is something far rarer: grounded consistency without emotional pressure, space, without absence, interest, without attachment. And that's where part 2 begins, because once you understand how to respond without reacting, you stop chasing signals. And start becoming the calm center she's unconsciously moving toward. Part 2, how to respond without reacting, the psychology that makes her feel safe. The moment you realize she's not pulling away because she's bored, but because she's overwhelmed by what she feels, everything changes. Not externally, internally. You stop chasing clarity, you stop demanding reassurance, you stop interpreting silence as rejection. And that internal shift is what changes her behavior, because women don't respond to what men say in moments like this, they respond to what men are. Why logic fails where emotional safety matters. Most men try to solve emotional fear with explanation. They say things like, I really like you, you don't need to be scared. You can trust me. I'm not like the others. Every one of these statements has the same hidden message: please don't leave. And fear doesn't relax in the presence of need, fear relaxes in the presence of stability. That's why the more you try to talk her out of her fear, the more her instincts push her away from you. You're attempting to control an emotional process that only calms when it's not being managed. The principle that changes everything: emotional gravity. Attraction doesn't come from pursuit. It comes from emotional gravity. Gravity doesn't chase, it doesn't convince, it doesn't explain, it remains grounded, and things move toward it naturally. When a woman feels emotionally dysregulated around you, your job is not to pull her closer, your job is to remain still. That stillness becomes the reference point her nervous system needs. The art of giving space without disappearing. This is where most men fail, not because they lack interest, but because they don't understand how to step back. Pulling away doesn't mean silence, it means non-attachment to outcome. You don't vanish, you don't punish, you don't withdraw warmth, you simply stop overinvesting in moments of uncertainty. You stay present, but not available on demand. That difference is subtle, but powerful. Presence says, I'm grounded. Availability on demand says, I'm waiting. And waiting feels like pressure, even when it's quiet. Matching energy without becoming reactive. Matching energy is misunderstood. It's not mirroring behavior, it's matching emotional weight. If she responds briefly, you don't fill the silence, you respond briefly, without resentment. If she goes quiet, you don't escalate effort, you let space exist. Without anxiety, you don't withdraw to provoke, you don't pursue to reassure. You remain consistent in tone, not frequency. Consistency is safety. Predictability is calm, neediness is volatility. The difference between confidence and detachment. Detached men are often mistaken for confident men, but they're not the same. Detachment is avoidance, confidence is self-containment. A confident man doesn't emotionally shut down, he simply doesn't lean on others to regulate his inner state. That's what she's watching for, not how often you text. Not how much attention you give, but whether her distance shakes you. If it does, she feels it. If it doesn't, she relaxes, because unconsciously, she's asking. If it does, she feels it. If it doesn't, she relaxes, because unconsciously, she's asking. The right way to reach out. When you do initiate, the content matters more than the contact. Never reach out to check temperature, seek reassurance, ask how she feels. That turns interaction into emotional interrogation. Instead, reach out with specific relevance, not, hey, how are you? But, walked past that cafe you mentioned, reminded me of that story you told. Specificity signals presence without pressure, it shows you're thinking, not waiting, it creates connection without demanding response, and most importantly, it positions you as anchored in your own life. Why this triggers safety instead of fear. Fear grows when a woman feels responsible for a man's emotional state. If she senses that her replies regulate your mood, that her availability defines your peace, that her distance destabilizes you, her instinct is to create more distance. But when she sees, you're steady regardless, you're engaged, not dependent, you're present, not attached, the fear begins to dissolve. Because now, connection feels like addition, not obligation, controlled. Vulnerability, without emotional leakage. Here's a truth most men misunderstand. Women are attracted to vulnerability, but repelled by emotional leakage. Vulnerability is self-aware. Emotional leakage is uncontrolled. The difference is ownership. Instead of saying, I really like you and I'm afraid of losing you, you say, I've learned to take things slowly when something feels meaningful. Same emotional truth, completely different energy. One burdens her, the other grounds you. Why your life outside her matters more than anything you say. Nothing calms emotional fear like seeing a man in motion, not chasing, not waiting, building, growing, living. When she observes you pursuing your body, your work, your purpose, your friendships, two things happen psychologically. She realizes she's not the center of your emotional universe. She feels safe knowing connection won't consume her identity. A man who is complete alone is not a man who demands completion from her. And that's the kind of man women risk vulnerability for, the subtle shift that signals she's opening again. Here's what happens when fear begins to soften. She doesn't confess feelings, she doesn't apologize. She becomes curious again, she asks questions she doesn't need answers to, she initiates contact without reason, she reintroduces lightness. This is her testing safety again, not to see if you'll chase, but to see if you'll remain centered. Your response here determines whether connection rebuilds or fear returns. The one rule you cannot break: never reward distance with overinvestment, and never punish fear with absence. Reward consistency with consistency, respond to distance with calm, If she pulls back, you stabilize. If she leans in, you remain grounded. You don't accelerate. You don't retreat. You hold center. Why most men never get past this stage? Because holding center is uncomfortable. It requires emotional discipline, self-respect, a life larger than one person. Most men either grasp or vanish. Very few stay present without pressure, and those few are remembered. The warning sign you must not ignore: not all resistance is fear, and this is where part 3 becomes critical. There is a woman who displays all the signs you've learned, yet has no intention of moving forward. Her pullback doesn't soften over time, it repeats endlessly. That pattern doesn't mean fear, it means addiction to emotional stimulation, and confusing her with a fearful woman will cost you months, sometimes years. In part 3, I'll show you how to tell the difference instantly, when to walk away without regret, and the final Stoic truth every man must accept. Part 3, the final test. When to stay grounded. And when to walk away. Everything you've learned so far has been about patience, restraint, and emotional mastery, but restraint without discernment becomes self-betrayal. So before we finish, there's one truth you must face, because this is where strong men separate themselves from confused ones. Not every woman who pulls away is afraid, some are simply entertained, and if you don't learn the difference, you won't lose her, you'll lose time, self-respect, and momentum. The woman this will never work on. There is a specific type of woman who looks exactly like the fearful one. She's hot and cold, she creates distance, she resists closeness, but her resistance does not soften over time. In fact, it escalates. Each moment of closeness is followed by a new excuse, a new delay, a new emotional loop, not because she's overwhelmed, but because she's stimulated. This woman is not afraid of attachment, she's afraid of boredom. She feeds on emotional tension, not connection. And here's the key difference most men miss: a fearful woman pulls away to feel safe, but slowly moves closer as safety grows. A chase-addicted woman pulls away to feel powerful, and never moves closer, no matter what you do. The one pattern that never lies: time reveals intention, fear fades with consistency, manipulation repeats with creativity. If after weeks, or months, of grounded presence, her closeness never stabilizes, her vulnerability never deepens, her effort never increases, you're not facing fear, you're facing emotional extraction, and staying at that point isn't patience, it's avoidance of self-respect. The Stoic exit, without drama or explanation. Here's how strong men walk away: they don't announce it, they don't threaten it, they don't justify it, they simply reallocate attention. No confrontation, no emotional closure speech, no last message. Because walking away isn't a tactic, it's a consequence. And the moment you do this from clarity rather than anger, something powerful happens. You regain internal order. Why walking away is sometimes the only attractive move: women don't respect emotional endurance, they respect discernment. Endurance without boundaries feels like availability. Discernment signals value. When you stop participating in emotional loops, the fearful woman feels relief. The manipulative woman feels loss. And only one of those is worth staying for. The final truth most men never accept: you cannot make someone feel safe, you can only be safe within yourself. And the paradox is this: the moment you stop trying to secure connection, you become the kind of man connection feels safe with. Because safety doesn't come from effort, it comes from presence without need. The real test was never about her. Here's the part no one tells you: she was never the test was this: can you remain open? Without obsession, interested, without attachment, present, without self-abandonment. Most men fail here. They confuse intensity with depth, they mistake waiting for strength. They tolerate confusion instead of choosing clarity, and in doing so, they lose themselves long before they lose her. The man who wins never chases certainty, he builds, he moves, he chooses alignment over attachment, and when a woman joins his path, it's because she wants to walk beside him. Not because he stood still long enough to be chosen. Final message: this is the line that changes everything. If she's afraid, remain grounded. If she's inconsistent, remain observant. If she's extracting, walk away. But above all, never let uncertainty turn you into someone you don't respect. Because the moment you abandon your center, is the moment attraction dies, even if she stays. If this video made you rethink a situation, or someone immediately came to mind while Listening, comment control below. I read every single one. And if you want to master emotional restraint, silent attraction, and the kind of presence that makes people feel safe without you saying a word, subscribe now, because the men who stay until the end of videos like this, are never the ones being ignored, they're the ones being remembered.